Will there be a VAT increase on the 1st of May? What is the future of the GNU? I mean, in a sense, they're separate questions with different answers, but of course they are interlinked because the tensions in the GNU have been brought to a head by two GNU members not voting for the fiscal framework when that came to a vote in Parliament a week ago. And two of the parties outside of the GNU, but in opposition to the government, who voted for the fiscal framework, Action SA and Build One South Africa, are being asked questions about why they voted for a VAT increase, and they will say that they did not. Well, they did, sort of, because the fiscal framework includes a VAT increase. I had a conversation with Herman Mashaba about a week ago, and he was adamant that it was fiction to say that there will be a VAT increase on the 1st of May. And Mmusi Maimane has written something for Daily Maverick about Budget 25 with the headline, "BOSA didn't give a blank check. We took responsibility and chose between bad and catastrophic." Over the past few days, there's been a lot of noise, some of it sincere, much of it opportunistic, about the recent vote in Parliament on the fiscal framework. South Africans deserve the truth, so let me be unequivocal. BOSA's vote was not an endorsement of the budget. It was not a blank check. It was a strategic, responsible decision taken to prevent a much worse outcome, the collapse of the entire national budget process. We were not presented with a choice between good and bad. We were forced to choose between bad and catastrophic. And in that moment, we chose to steady the ship, because responsible leadership means making difficult decisions when the stakes are high, not scoring easy political points when the country teeters on the edge. The BOSA leader joins us now on the telephone. Mmusi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon, John, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans.
Do you think that there'll be a VAT increase on the 1st of May? I've had a letter from my bank. I've had a letter from my television supply company. I've had a letter from Teljoy. I've had about 10 letters telling me there will be a VAT increase on the 1st of May.
Well, that's seven more than me, but
You've had three. Okay, so you've had some.
So I fully understand what South Africans are feeling when they're getting these letters. I think it's important for South Africans to realize the fact that, of course, companies must prepare one way or another. And as South Africans, it's not abnormal for institutions that lend us money in one way or another or give us services in one way or another to adjust their pricing. We do so when the repo rate is announced. Effectively, when the members of the MPC meet, they can make a decision to say this thing is set at the repo rate is this, and therefore your bank communicates with you. So I think we will attend to that. But let me be more specific to the VAT particular question. All of us in Parliament would agree that because now the budget has left the executive and is now in the hands of Parliament, parliamentarians agree we don't want a 0.5% increase. And so in effect, the Money Bills and Related Matters Act gives Parliament the power to amend, make recommendations to the budget, of which one of them is that, which is the argument we've held with the Minister of Finance when he says, well, I need the additional revenue that VAT would bring of about 16 billion rands. If you want us to remove that, show us what additional revenue we can find and show us what expenses we can cut. Now, we have to get a fiscal framework through so that we can then actually actively do that exercise, because that's how the law of budget making is written. It says once it moves from the Finance Committee, it goes to the Appropriations Committee, which I chair, and we will make those adjustments. And we've made a number of key suggestions, such as, changing how much funding we send to the NEF, such as reducing international missions as far as diplomats are concerned, such as ensuring that ultimately we fund the NPA and the SIU so we can stop corruption, and that we take R1 trillion over the medium term and fund it to infrastructure so we can achieve growth. But we've also said, on the revenue side, tax VAT or personal income tax, as you've seen this bracket creep conversation we've been having, aren't the only two sources of income you can do this through. You can actually declare online sports betting, which includes soccer and all of that.
Can we, because we have limited time available, I want to try and understand, because I had this conversation with Herman Mashaba, I've had conversations with the DA and the EFF And I've had conversations with observers of Parliament. And obviously, Mmusi, you know a heck of a lot more about parliamentary procedure than I do, so I hesitate to take you on that. But what I don't understand is what confidence you have that Parliament will change Treasury's mind. Because everything I've heard Enoch Godongwana say, what I've heard Cyril Ramaphosa say, and what I've heard Paul Mashatile say suggests that they believe that there will still be an increase in VAT of 0.5 percentage point.
Well, all of the people you've spoken to are all members of the executive. So what we've never tested before in South Africa is actually the powerful piece of legislation, which is the Money Bills Act. And the Money Bills Act gives Parliament the power. All laws in this country are passed by Parliament. The budget is a law which is passed by Parliament. Therefore, Parliament has the right to ultimately be able to say, what are the amendments we need to make? The law is specific about this issue. And we are now working, I've gotten legal advice from Parliament as to what are the legal instruments we can use to achieve amending of this VAT Act, so that ultimately you can claw it back, and at least by the medium-term budget policy statement, we can then set a different course. So my confidence...
Okay, so you're suggesting that the VAT increase might come in on the 1st of May, but it won't be around for the entire budget year. It will be scrapped by an act of Parliament sometime in the months after the 1st of May.
That's one option. The other option is for us to do it sooner if we can find a legal instrument to do that, which the law empowers. The question I have is whether do we table an adjusted fiscal framework, or how do we go about that exercise? And I think there's unanimity amongst the parties that are meeting, including the Secretary General of the ANC, or not the Secretary General, I mean the Chief Whip of the ANC, that this must be a way forward that we can find. And that's our commitment to do. And we'll task a technical team to do that. And then post facto, I'll be able to communicate to you as to how long, when exactly, and what is the legal process that we are going to adopt.
I mean, I'm sure that there are a lot of ANC MPs who are scared about the response of voters to a VAT increase at a time when South Africans are as financially overstretched and resourced as we are at the moment. But are you that confident that the ANC caucus in Parliament will vote with other parties like BOSA and Action SA and the IFP and Good and so on, and vote against an increase that their party leadership seems to still want?
It will be predicated on the use of the law. And I think, again, I want to stress that point, that previously when you had an outright majority, you could literally announce it from the executive and it will just follow through in Parliament. Now that no one has a majority, in essence, it comes back to Parliament to make recommendations. But that recommendation is not empty threats. It's the idea that we found expenditure cuts. And what I said to you earlier is that if you declare online gambling as a sin tax, you will raise close to about 64 billion rands in the current financial year, which will alleviate or the need for an increase in VAT. That is the job of parliamentarians, and therefore in our interactions, we're sending that kind of feedback to say this is not a necessary tax.
Mmusi Maimane, thank you very much indeed, Chair of the Standing Committee on Appropriations in the National Assembly and the head of Build One South Africa. Okay, so he holds out, it seems, a minuscule chance of there not being a VAT increase on the 1st of May, and seems to think it more likely that there will be a VAT increase, but it won't last that long. Soos hulle sê, ons sal sien. I hope he's right.